Hello and welcome back. Our next speaker is from the Netherlands. She makes really interesting garments that do stuff with machine learning, robotics, and sensors. She and I have been talking for a long time about making a cappuccino dress, because she makes dresses that do drinks, that serve drinks. Please welcome to the Hackaday Superconference stage, Anouk Wipprecht.
Thank you so much. Cool, I'm gonna put this thing in here so I have more space to move around. Cool, yeah, so happy to be here. I want to be here last year already, but I didn't make it. So yeah, who am I? I create designs that turn transparent, that drip ink, supply you with cocktail shots, or capture itself in smoke. My dresses have microcontroller heartbeats and eat batteries for dinner. They flirt and interact with you like humans do, and they get frustrated when you get too close into their personal space. They need attention and regular checkups to survive, and exposure to heavy rain can give them a short-circuit ticket to robot dress heaven. Sounds weird, right? So yeah, this is one of my babies. This is one of my dresses. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of my dresses and also tell a little bit of the process and the history of them. So basically, this is a robotic spider dress. So it's a dress with mechanic limbs on the shoulders and proximity sensors in the front. I had the pleasure to make this at Intel, where I was working at that moment in 2014, 2015. And basically, when you step into the personal space of this dress, it's attacking you, which you can see here. Yeah, so I'm using ultrasonic rangefinders and little Pololu servo controllers in the shoulder plates, and little Hobby King servos in the little legs, what you can see here. And the design is based on different aspects from the spider. So I take a lot of inspiration from nature, like you can think of like by mimicry, but also like how not only how animals look like, also how they behave. So behavior is really important for me, so which I correlate to system behavior. The dress here itself is built up from the eyes of the spider. It almost looks like it's eating, so the bones, like the bone-looking structure, it's 3D printed from SLS, so it's 3D printed in nylon, and I want to create a dress that almost looked like it's eating, sort of. So the design is based on snake bones, on bird bones, and human bones, so which you can see in the skeleton, and it also has respiration sensors in the side, which you can see up. They're modeled after the kidneys. So looking at like animals and humans and how you can fuse these things and how you can place that on the body. So here you can see a little bit of the scheme, how that works, using the notion of the spaces that we have around us. So the intimate space, the personal space, the social space, and the public space. And as you move into the space, as you move closer to this dress, it's reacting. And it's reacting in 12 states of behavior. Otherwise, it would be a really super boring dress, only one state. So basically, how you interact with this dress, the more fast and aggressive you walk into the personal space of this dress, the dress is also attacking much more aggressive back to you. For me that's interesting because I'm traveling around with these dresses, so they see a lot of different cultures. In the Netherlands, where I'm from, people I call them assholes, because and I can say that I'm from there. So people come very fast, very close by, so my system is also reacting like fuck off, you know. So whether like I'm here in America, I always say the gentleman distance, sort of, you know, and the dress is more, it's a little bit like it goes to the front with the legs into the back, almost like it's fencing, you know. When you step too far out of the space, it pulls its legs up and it does a sort of na 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 na, almost like provoking you to come close, you know. So really thinking of not only how this dress can attack, but how can it has a behavior? How can you create a system that can act on your behalf, sort of? How can you take the notion of robotics, placing them on the body, and what will it do? What can it do, sort of? And how can this medium and this notion become an expressor or something that you can interact with in a new way? So here you can see some of the back piece in the back. Mostly I put them on the back. The electronics, the respiration sensor in the side, proximity sensors in the front. And for Intel, for the Maker Fairs, we also made some nylon-based SLS printed spiders. They were dancing on the Maker Fair. because the dress could not make it at all times. So for me, yeah, this notion of like playing with robotics, I fucking love robots. I love them so much. I also like animals. So where is this hybrid between this animal and a robot, sort of, you know? So talking about the animalistic, but also if you look at these new interactions that we are able to create and that we can create regarding to these notions of putting electronics and robotics on the body, how can things become social, these like social interactions? How can they become personal? How can they become intimate, emotional, psychological, but also like primal? How can they be this, maybe an aggressor or a seducer? How can they be interactive? How can they be pretty? How can they be weird? How can they be awkward, you know? And I think that is the most interesting thing for me, like that I and we all in this space are able to create, and we are able to define and redefine these new interactions that the technologies that we have around us and the technologies that the generation growing up with can use and can recreate with, sort of. So one of my other dresses is a smoke dress. So again, going back to the animal, and this is an octopus pushing out ink so it can dive away. So this is like a defense mechanism, right? So I created a dress based on that. So it's a dress based with sensors all around. And the more people are in the immediate surroundings of this dress, the more smoke comes out. And that looks a little bit like this. For me, this dress is really cool because for me, the smoke is really mounting into the space. It's also very practical because when I walk around with my model, I can always know where she is because I just have to follow the trail. It's like, okay, I guess she went there. So this is one of my other favorites. A recent project that I did is with Victoria Modesta, who I love very much. If you don't know her, like Google her, she's amazing. She's a bionic pop artist. She's an amputee, and she has a below the knee, like a prosthetic. So I had the pleasure to work with her the last 2 years. We did a few projects, and this is one of them, like using the notion of the smoke dress and using her leg, which is missing, and then equipping that with electronics, stashing it full with electronics, right? Because we can. And then, see what we can do with that, sort of. So this is one of the designs that I created for her. So a smoke leg, so she steps on it, and it's exploding in smoke. Currently, I'm doing another project with her, which I'm not naming now, but she's a really interesting person regarding to amputee and people with disabilities, and the notion of making it cool, making it something that can be cherished instead of making it a taboo, sort of, making it discussable and making it a cool thing also by the use of fashion, sort of. So, yeah, Google her. So one of my other dresses, and this is an oldie, some of you might know this, probably not. It's a robotic cocktail dress, and this one is a dress from 2009, 2010, and it's basically a dress with a front piece and a system with solenoid valves, and it's serving you a drink, but not just a drink. You need to play a game of truth or dare with the system. So the model comes up to you and she says, like, hey, do you want to have a drink? And of course you say yes, because either you want a drink or you feel peer pressured because you're standing in a group. So it's like but so from that moment, like, hey, do you want a drink? And of course you say yes. So she says, like, well, you need to play a game with me, and it's truth or dare. So she has this interface on her arm, and I'll show you again. The interface is, and that was like 8 years ago, right? The interface is showing the question, like here, for example, kiss all 10 fingers, roll over the floor, bark like a dog. And I have the notion of like getting invited to these really luxurious events where people are dressed up and in suits, you know. So this is like my perfect dress to bring to that moment, because it's a lot of provocation and people need to roll, like trap and roll over and do all kinds of freaky stuff that they normally don't really do. So when she's coming in, most of the people are normal, and when she steps out, when she goes away, everybody's like this social mix-up and like they're having fun and all. So that's for me a really social dress, right? Like she's really opening up this conversation. So that's why it's another one that I like very much, because of the more provocative notion of it. So here you can see the system. Solenoid valves from Festo, which are normally used for air. So Festo is never happy with me because I'm using them for liquid. They always email me, Anouk, these are not, but it's like, it's working out. So here you can see the system. I was using not ultrasonic rangefinders here. I'm using sharp sensors at that time, so IR infrared, and all about this notion of like the interactive nature, right? The spider dress, smoke dress, cocktail dresses, and like what can they do and how can they define something different, you know? How can it bring something new to the table? And talking about these distances. So what I brought with me today is a little bit of history, because some of you might have seen the spider dress, but the spider dress was is actually a baby of another dress. So this is the mother or the father dress, I guess it's both. It was a former design. The former dress was cut out of plexiglass, so it was laser cutted, and it looked like this. So basically what I brought here was a little bit of the process. And this dress actually came to exist because I came out of a big project for a car brand, and I was really tired. And I was hanging on the couch with a friend of mine, and he also saw that I was really tired. So he said like, hey, I have something for you. You might enjoy this, sort of. And I was like, no, go away, I just want to sleep. And then he puts on this game, and it's called Limbo. And I don't know how many of you guys have seen this game? Hands up. Fucking awesome, yeah. So most of you guys know how awesome it is. Otherwise, tell your neighbor and like play the game. It's like super, super cool. I'm not working for them. I'm just really a big fan. So in this game, there's like basically there's this whole shadow world, and you're playing it with this like little boy. It's a little bit lugubre, but like there's this spider at one point of the game, and the spider doesn't have a face. It just has these legs. So it's a really abstract notion of this spider in there, you know. And so when you move the boy to the spider starts to want to basically pinch and kill the boy, but and it's not just for me. The notion that the game creators really thought of this notion of like the spider leg and this half sort of spider being this like sensoric system, really feeling the boy and like trying to pinch it. So for me that was just like super fascinating. So what I do then, I'm mostly writing up like my thoughts on it, and this is really important for me because like while creating, you sometimes get sidetracked, right? It's like, ooh, cool, ba ba ba, and all of a sudden you get a pink dress which is shooting bubblegum instead of being scary, you know? So I always need to have like this line because I'm just super fucking enthusiastic about anything that I do. So I write it out, I write some keywords, the possible interactions, like an interesting discussion that I think, the abstracts and all of that stuff, and then I start to design. So, and the design is not mechanical per se. In the first step, it's often like the notion of just like making a mock-up and seeing where you go. So this is just a system with pull and string based on this notion of these legs, sort of, you know. So this was like in 2013, 2014. So basically, like seeing how you can create a system by just pulling it and see if this is a little bit interaction that I wanted to have, sort of. It's actually cool. This was like 2014, 15. It's like, yeah, this was like 4 years ago, exactly. It's really cute because it was during Halloween. So yeah, and then from that point on, like knowing, like, okay, what is the spaciousness and how to sort of create this device, you know. So this is all cut from plexiglass. It has the same motors, the same little servo motors, the Hobbiking servos that I'm using later on as well. But this system was all screwed, and there was like little screws in there. Over 200 screws were in this design, and basically the problem that I had was when I was presenting it, sort of they started to drill out, you know. So me having to present and like 2 hours, 3 hours afterwards, always like screwing in these like little screws again. So this is one of my decisions later on to create the design in nylon, to 3D model it and 3D print it as well. So this spider dress is based on the Teensy. So Teensy is mostly the module that I'm using for prototyping. Of course, like the spider dress later on is based on the Intel Edison, but this one has a Teensy heartbeat. And for me, it's again all about behavior. So how can you create like interesting behavior using this notion of the hybrid between robotics and animals? So you can see some of the movements as well. Yeah, so basically, I guess a lot of people liked it.
And now I don't know about you, but some people really have issues with personal space, right?
Really?
So if you get too close, I would be wearing a dress like this. Take a look. This is a robotic spider dress.
Yep, 6 robotic limbs protrude from a black dress, crawling around your body. There are 6. We know spiders have 8 legs, but it's a dress. Get over it.
It's this wearable dress that's equipped with sensors that interact with the people around you. If they get too close, those legs will come out and just push them away.
Yeah, so it's not just weird legs moving around randomly, like if you strapped a giant 6-legged spider to your back.
Hey, I would love to wear that dress at a bar.
Yeah, I don't know how that would go over for you, because the people who would come up to talk to you might not be the people that you're most excited to talk to back. I mean,
Right.
you might really need it for the personal space thing.
No, exactly. It would be fun.
But yeah, so this is a little bit like history on like where the babies come from, sort of. So what I do is basically, and that's an interesting notion. If you talk about fashion, something is in and out, and it's changing very rapidly for me. You know, something is in and out, seasonal, and all of that stuff. Whether like I create these designs, right, and they grow with me, and they get updates and upgrades, like robots and robotics, sort of. So there's always an interesting discussion that I have regarding to the fashion industry, how that would go, and making, of course, these things producible. It's just different systems, because like wearable tech has always been curated through the rules of technology, and not and never moderated through the rules of fashion per se. Because fashion step a little bit later into that game. For me, it's a lot about like the notion of creating fashion, creating it as an expressive medium, as a communicative medium, something that can do something non-verbally, right? That can act on your behalf, that can do something like for you and with you, and yeah, by that fashion becoming a sort of a new kind of interface. But also then I discovered like this interface becoming a tool back, of course, as well. So. Another version of the cocktail dress is a little bit more simpler version, but it's created for Cirque du Soleil. And it has a peristaltic pump from Party Robotics that I'm using at the back piece, which is pretty cool. And the designs that are walking around in the restaurant of Cirque du Soleil in Hartebitza, they just have like a little push button, goes to the peristaltic pump, goes to the front, and the dress is serving a little cocktail shot. So it's a pretty simple interaction. They want to have something cool for their restaurants. So basically, these dresses are walking around like white, gold, silver, black. Out there and like serving drinks. So the funny thing is, like, I also created this other dress, so talking about good things and also about failures. So I created this dress. I thought it was cool, like the cocktail dress, and then also one dress that would shoot bubblegum, because I thought like, oh, this is an amazing thing, you know, and some things in your mind, they sound like really good, but then when you make them, it's like, So basically, this dress was like a little bit too aggressive, so basically it just pushed chewing gum balls in the faces of people. So Cirque du Soleil, they come up to me and they say like, Anouk, we really love your cocktail dress, you know, but the bubblegum dress we're not so sure about. So that needs like a little redesign still, but I still thought it was really cute, but it needs a little bit more time, I guess, on my side. But still, yeah. If you guys are ever in Ibiza, Heart is the restaurant and it's pretty cool. They do a lot, like they invited basically Cirque du Soleil in this restaurant, and they do like a lot of like food experiences and all of that stuff. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. So then the notion of like sharing it, sort of, you know, like so I try in my free time as much as I can to do like if I'm traveling around a lot, I come a lot to makerspaces, just give like free lectures, especially kids in electronic, girls in programming. I also try to do as much as I can, putting things on Instructables with the do-it-yourself. So, for example, like the cocktail dresses here as well, and that is really important for me to not only making cool shit, but also making things approachable for the generations growing up, sort of, you know. That is really one of my values, and that I would always teach anybody to do so as well in their own. Like, what can you share? What can you? How can you help the world? Sort of, you know. So the cool thing that came about, sort of, and me putting up this cocktail dress, just to see like maybe people can like use part of it, you know, and like we're just putting stuff online. And then the cool thing that came out of that, actually, a group in Vienna of kids there, and they're like so fucking amazing. They said like, oh, that's cool, you're making a dress, you know, we're gonna do it out of Lego. you know? I was like, what? so they did that, and I think that's like the most incredible thing ever, you know? Like me trying to like do this in another medium, but like I don't know how much you guys like played with Lego. It's a pretty hard medium by itself, you know, and then making like such things out of it. I was like so amazed. So basically these kids, it got retweeted or something, and I saw it, and I was like, hey guys, you made my dress, you know? And they said like, oh, we're so sorry, Anouk, and this and that. And I said like, no, it's fucking amazing, and I'm gonna share it with everybody. I'm gonna show it everybody. So here I'm sharing it with you guys, and I think yeah, it's really, really cool. So the cool thing is what they did, because it was Vienna. The cocktail dress that I showed you before, it started to exist for this festival in Vienna called Roboxotica. It's a festival for cocktail making robots happening every December. So might you be there? It's really cool. It's from my hacker crew at Monochrome and MetaLab, the hackerspace there. And this festival is happening. So basically they brought back this dress to that festival. And like, yeah, people knew the cocktail dress. So it was just a really cool thing. And that's really sweet. So they took it to another level. So they also recreated the spider dress out of that, which is even more, I think it's just genius. Just like how they take in consideration like the proximity sensors, the corsetry in the front, the mechanic limbs on the shoulders, and also the system in the back, sort of. And it's really a functional, sort of a functional apparatus as well. So I think this is just so unbelievable for me, you know, like the notion of creativity, not like copy paste but copy morph, sort of, you know. So how can you bring something yourself to it, and how can that influence like your design and your process and all of that stuff? So I don't have to tell you guys, this is just my sheet that I always put in to bring more acknowledgement to the field for people that don't know about it. But like, yeah, sharing and making share with your community is just like one really important thing for me that I try to repeat. So the other thing is really important to me, and it's called experiments. And so one project that I brought with me was a project that I did at my first Maker Faire. I never went to the Maker Faire at that time, and it was in 2014, I think. I was working at Autodesk. I did a residency program at Pier 9, and people told me about the Maker Faire. And it was cool. I was like, cool, that's amazing, and I want to do something for that. So I teamed up with my buddies at Architect. I don't know if who in the audience here knows Architect? Joe and the guys? Yeah, fucking awesome. So Architect has like big Tesla coils, and they're making like Tesla coil music, and they're fucking incredible. So we teamed up and we did something at the Maker Faire. And as I said, I was working at the Pier 9 residency program, which is really amazing there. And I wanted to create a design. I wanted to basically have plasma balls on my shoulder. And Architect had 2 Tesla coils of each 500,000 volts. I was like, oh, that's cool, because then we can create a situation that they would light up my plasma balls. Then came into the mind that you also need to like sort of guide it over your body and not die. So that was a little bit more. And we had like 1.5 weeks. 2 weeks in total, so that was like that was a challenge. So basically, here you can see some of the process, of designing. We had a water jet there at Autodesk, so like cutting out the plates, merging them all together. I made a conductive suit. I bought like $5 like these plasma balls, and then make customized design for and printing it out on the objects. So it looks a little bit more cool. Sprinting. Like sandpapering, blasting it, painting it, making helmets so you don't freeze your brain, I guess. So, okay, so the design was ready, and then I was looking for a model. And I was still in this thing of like building this thing, right? Like I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. We have like 1 week, blah, blah, blah. So I put this on my Facebook, and like nobody reacted. And I was so disappointed. I was like, no, but like, what is going on here, you know? So that was the thing. So the funny thing is, after the performance, the day after, I got like 60 emails like, hey, I'm here, like I can be the model, because they saw it and it all worked out. So I was like, okay. But so in the end, I did it myself. But it was actually a much better like way, because like it was actually pretty experimental. But here you can see us, and we were like testing it out. Before I went on the stage, like we haven't actually tested it, so it was really like sort of an like make it or break it kind of situation. But it worked all out in the end. So here's like a little clip. Because this was still the testing and me being like scared to death, but was so good. So that was the effect, just with a small Tesla coil gun, that we want to reach out like more with the coils. So that, then we tried it. Oh yeah, we did try it. We did try it like first on the, but without a body. Oh, a pretty cool effect. So it was like 1 hour before the performance, and this was the performance then. Yeah, so that was my first time Maker Faire. So yeah, you can find it on Instructables, how to make this yourself. How to be fashionably struck by lightning is the name, so for all of you guys. So yeah, why? Because it's experimental. So my problem, my biggest failure in this whole situation was not telling my mother, who was in the Netherlands. And she has my name search on her email, right? So things pop up, you know? So all of a sudden she sees me like I was sort of blown half of the stage, and she's asking me in Dutch, like, hey, darling, are you okay? Like, do you want to tell me something? So there was like, yeah, one, always tell your mother and your dad that like things might happen. That's what I learned from this. So yeah, so a little bit my notions, which I will always curate and tell people, like, research your thoughts, build your dreams, open source, and skill share, and also be experimental. And yeah, for me, it's just like, yeah, something that really works, like between doing like, sometimes I do more boring things that I have to do and deliver reports and all of that stuff, or beta test some stuff. And like me, like working on these things, it's really my art. It's really the things that I really have the passion about, you know, something that just really, that I really need, yeah, to do and to explore sort of. And it just gives me so much joy. So I'm always super happy and to teach and to see other people be in their element while making and while building, you know, and that is just, yeah, so much to my heart. So I'm going to close down, I think I have a few minutes left, on a project that I'm busy with at the moment. And it's about yeah, sort of connecting, I already talked about connecting the body to the environment, sort of, but also like, yeah, connecting the body sort of to the design. So in several designs of mine, and I have in total like 40 designs, 40 dresses, and all these dresses do something different. So for me, all these dresses are case studies. It's a case study on how a different piece of technology on the body is interacting and socializing in a different way with the surroundings or with the body itself. So I'm using a lot of like, proximity sensors, cameras, like ultrasonic rangefinder, sonar, like all of that stuff, but also like how to connect the body. So for example, you can do, like, of course, you guys all know this, but I'm going through it, EEG, pulse, muscle contraction, skin conductancy, lung volume, like respiration, I think is really interesting according to like getting more the notion of closer towards emotional data. Then HRV is much more rational for me. Like the way we use our lungs and the way we breathe is actually really interesting to get like emotional data out of place in space, or accelerometers, the heart rate, the heart volume, and also the temperature. So one of the projects that I did with Intel was like basically, that was at that time like hacking a NeuroSky commercial device. Could not do too much with it because it was not for me reliable data, sort of, but placing a camera in a design and see what I could find by my model walking around. It was the Intel Developer Conference, and basically she was walking around, and by me having her established with proximity sensors with a camera, and also with the NeuroSky and also HRV, I could see like who was in her space, what was happening. So I could see like computer vision notion and also how her body was responding to that. And I thought that was interesting. Only this was a dress and the camera was built in a dress and it could only be worn by my model sort of. So I was doing a residency at Ars Electronica last year. Ars Electronica is a really big media center in Linz in Austria, which I really like. They have been around for like many, many years and they do a festival called the Ars Electronica Festival every year. I was there as an artist in residency for 3 months, and instead of making a dress, I wanted to make a device. And instead of making like a normal device, I wanted to work with children with ADHD. So children that are just a little bit more curious, for the world than other people and that other kids might be, you know. And we think of this as an illness in some case, and we give these children medication. And a lot of that, and like a lot of it at a young age, and especially in America. And I think that is really a bad thing, you know? I do not like the pharmaceutical industry. And I think like numbing out a child from an early age, because this child is a little bit more curious towards the world, is a really bad thing. So I want to make a device that instead makes them understand how their brain works, you know, that can correlate some information back to them. So I placed a little camera in a headset, and I'm doing medical EEG. And by basically triggering the P3, which I'm measuring, the camera goes on. So it's recording what happens in their surroundings. So, for example, things that trigger like EEG and signals are loud sounds, are somebody calling my name, are bright colors like blue and red, for example. These things make you really easily spike, sort of, you know. And like children are really, they're really interested in how their body is working, you know. And it's really interesting to work with children and show them what actually is happening when they get more curious for the world, you know, or when they get a little bit more excited. So the device that I proposed was this one. So we've been working on that for the last year, since February. And basically what I want to do is like, there were like a few things that I want to solve. Like one is the medical situations. For example, this is like the 1020 system of medical EEG. So the kids are being measured, like everybody's being measured like that. So over 60 electrodes on the head, sort of. And yeah, one thing for me is like looking also at a hospital situation in where these kids get invited into a white space with a doctor and having this net of things on their body. First of all, the child is not, we're not stepping in the world of the child, right? They step into our world. And like it takes a while, like so for more pragmatic reasons, it takes a while to measure, to get these measurements, because this child is not going to be in their curious state and in their playful state, you know. And so I was researching like how to limit, like one thing was like limit the amount of electrodes. So I found out that like working with the P300, so the P3 wave of ERP, is creating this mohawk situation in where you have the electrodes here. So this is basically the nose, and on the back of the head as well, you know. So I could create a unicorn shape there, so which would fit the little camera in there. And I'm using the unicorn horn for two reasons, because placement of the camera, and also because unicorns are fucking awesome. Just saying. And also, like, because of creating this device using the unicorn horn, what I said, like, you're not letting the children step into the medical space, but you're stepping into their space because you're playing with their imagination and the playfulness and the notion of fantasy and a unicorn horn, sort of. So for me, it's the notion of going towards them. And the other thing is, this is a device that you can put on and put off and not having to be interwoven in this net, sort of, you know. So that's another thing, like the freedom of of having a device that you can put on and also put off, I found really important if you are trying to develop such a device, sort of for the child, having this notion of being in control of the fact of putting it on and off. That's just a much more comfortable state, sort of. So this, what I'm working with is active dry electrodes that have these little fingers that stick through the hair. So you also don't need to have like the gel in between that. You do not need any gel in there. So basically, integrating it in the headset, and this is how the headset looks like now. Measuring the notion of like using the P3 wave and seeing what we could do. I had a lot of problems in the beginning because I'm just like, whatever, I'm a maker, you know. I don't come from like neuroscience background. I just want to make a device that gives a certain freedom, right? So in the beginning, like the neuroscience department said like, no, you cannot do that because you need to have all the fluctuations of the brain and da-da-da-da-da and all of that stuff. But I said like, no, like I do not need that. I basically just need an on and off switch for my camera. You know, and that changes the situation, sort of. Like going through this process, going through these three months, and having to work with the neuroscience department on this. Actually, we could develop a system that is working in this way. So we got to collaborate a little closer on that. And for me, it's about the notion of like having genuine data, but also not forcing like the children. Then, like if we can rethink this situation, if we can rethink these devices and like a medical situation or hospital or pharmaceutical industry for the generations growing up, sort of, you know, that is something that is just like really valuable for me. But also like having a device that instead of again, inviting the children into the medical space, it takes maybe 20 minutes until you have your data, versus like, well, you come towards them, you create a unicorn, and they're like fucking excited because, yeah, unicorns, you know? And then this child is already in their state, so it's already in their space and into their playfulness, you know? So like, trying to look at a more playful way. Where can you invite play and the notion of fashion, for example, into your design process? And of course, this is like a fucking utopian image, right? But it's more an image that I like to believe in, sort of, instead of like the notion of restricting. But so the same company that told me no, actually we worked on the little set, and we have 30 of them now. So it's called the G Unicorn. And it's really cute, and we're doing hackathons all over the world with them. And I'm super excited for next year because we're going to do one in Japan, and I've never been to Japan yet. So I invite you guys all to come there because I think it's pretty cool. But so this is like just a project that I'm at the moment working on, and I'm really excited about, sort of, and that I just wanted to share. And it really goes into the notion of basically like the notion of like thinking outside of the box. Like we have all these technologies, we have all these electronics, and we have all these possibilities on interaction design, you know. And how can we create things that are a little bit more different, maybe social, maybe emotional, maybe psychological, maybe awkward, you know, or primal, all these words that I talked to you about before, you know. How can you design that? How can you put that in your process? And how can we think of a new generation of technology that can be curated a little bit this way? For me, I always say like technology came into our world to help us, but at the moment of time, it's not helping us, it's overwhelming us. And like a lot of these technologies are not there to curate for that notion, sort of, you know? So I would love to have like much more interfaces that are much more like social, playful, and all of that around us. So I hope that this is an open invitation to be as awkward as possible on building your next device. And thank you so much.